Well, hello and welcome to this virtual brown bag. My name is Diane Mueller. I'm the Director of Community Development at Red Hat for OpenShift. And first of all, I just want to thank everybody in OpenStack land here down in Austin this week, all 7,000 of you, and especially all the folks over in the summit who have contributed to OpenStack, because it's been a wonderful community for us to be part of for many years. I've been working with the OpenStack community since Essex, so I think that's 2011. And today I'm going to talk about what might be called the new LAMP stack. I think in the keynote they started talking about what is going to be the new LAMP stack, and then they went right on to talk about Kubernetes like multiple times. So today I'm going to talk about some cross-community collaboration that's going on between OpenShift, Red Hat's what was formerly known as a platform as a service, now cloud application platform, part of that whole cloud native framework, and Kubernetes and OpenStack have been working together. And in my role at Red Hat, I'm a community manager, so I herd cats and get people to work on open source projects and try and merge their pull requests and do all that kind of goodness. And there's a lot of that going on at Red Hat. Someone once did a count that says 1 million here in this slide here. There are more than 1 million open source projects out there in the universe. At Red Hat, we've counted once, there are over 100,000 open source projects that we have our fingers in, that we're working on, we put resources on, or that we incorporate in our distributions. And in the cloud, there's a lot of them that play an important role in what we bring to the stack of things that people deploy on OpenStack and under OpenShift, and to do all that. And at Red Hat, the little piece that I work on is called OpenShift Origin. That's the name of the open source project. And we're working today with two other very important foundations and organizations that come under the Linux Foundation to make sure that all of these cloud native pieces play together. And the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, you may have heard a little bit about that here, is where Kubernetes has been open sourced into, and a number of other projects will be coming under that umbrella. And it's really been an important part of starting to build the standard ways that we deploy things onto infrastructure like OpenStack and others. And so you'll hear a lot this week at OpenStack Summit about things being cloud native and making sure that all the pieces and parts of the new applications that we're deploying work well in this space. The other piece of the pie is in terms of working together as communities, is around the Open Container Initiative, where you'll see a lot of the pieces of the container world being built together and creating standards for things like Docker and Rocket and all of the container pieces that we need to move forward as a community. So really, what my role is and what I'm here today to talk about is how we can better connect all these different disparate communities that are trying to work together to bring their applications, their pieces of the infrastructure, their pieces of the platform to the enterprise in a nice, seamless way and work together. So some of you have heard in other presentations, and I know the FICO folks are here and they're going to be doing a presentation as well. We've had OpenStack running OpenShift in production for quite some time at FICO, which is Fair Isaac, the data analytics company for all of the financial information that flows through our banking systems and our worlds these days. And they've done a lot of really great work, and they're part of the OpenShift community as well as the OpenStack community. So there's a lot of overlap in the worlds that we're seeing here. And so the communities are learning more about their interdependencies and how we connect each other to each other. So it's not like OpenShift can do something without it impacting the OpenStack deployments. So we really have to communicate really well with each other. So for those of you who don't know what OpenShift is, hands in the room, anybody? There we go. There's a couple of OpenShift versions here. But OpenShift's been around for about 4.5 years. It was formerly known as a platform as a service, and a lot of you still call it that. We're a cloud application platform. Some people call it a cloud native framework. There'll be lots of different marketing spiels on what it is. But basically, it's a way to take your application from the source code repositories that you know and love, like Git and GitHub and GitLabs or wherever you're storing stuff, take it through the CI/CD workflows like Jenkins and others, and manage that whole application lifecycle from source code to building images that can run, Docker images that are immutable that you can run, and wiring those containers together. Because those containers, I think one of the myths of container role is that everyone's application is going to run inside of one container. And what we've seen in most of the use cases is that there's multiple containers that make up what your service is, or your app, what we call the application. So for data storage, web servers, the actual code that's running, the front ends, all of that is distributed in multiple containers, and those have to be wired together and deployed and managed, and those deployments have to be managed nicely. And as you have to patch them or version different pieces of the operating system, that's what OpenShift does. It brings that piece into play for you in a nice, seamless way. So when we look at OpenShift, sometimes you think of it as like this monolithic thing. You know, your containers run on it, and that's what developers sometimes like to see. It's like we don't want to know, as developers, all the pieces and parts that are going on. We just want to push our code from Git into something, have it manage and create and build a container. But the reality is that there's a whole lot of stuff going on under the hood. And for the container orchestration and the cluster services, we rely now on Kubernetes. So if you saw that survey this morning in one of the keynotes of what are people running on OpenStack today to manage their containers. There was a slide deck there. And Kubernetes was one of the towers, and another one was OpenShift. The reality is those two things are both Kubernetes. Under the hood at OpenShift, we are running Kubernetes to manage your containers in pods. So when you deploy OpenShift itself, you are actually deploying Kubernetes. And you can use the OpenShift user interface and the OpenShift CLI to deploy your applications and to manage them, but you can also get directly into the Kubernetes. So that's one of the secrets I'll tell you today, is that if you deploy OpenShift and use our Ansible scripts and playbooks, you get Kubernetes too. So it's a pretty good package deal. So we run on OpenStack, which is why we're here, but we also run on bare metal, AWS, Google Compute, anything. So it's really a nice open API. So once you figure out how to do it, you can build it across and deploy across private and public clouds. So it's a really nice, easy way to get into the Kubernetes room. So how many of you are interested in running Kubernetes? Yeah, a lot of you. So here I am. Check out openshift.org, download an all-in-one Vagrant, and you will be running Kubernetes in a VM. Just sort of a little bit of magic and really easy to do. So as we know, Kubernetes, though, is really focusing on the cluster management, so deploying into a pod all of the containers. And what OpenShift is doing is working on making sure those applications are wired up nicely and deploy and easy to manage and easy to version and control and scale up and down the different pieces in multiple containers. So we are really hypersensitive to what you're actually running in those containers. And in some ways, Kubernetes doesn't really care what's in those containers. They just like to scale things very nicely. So I'm here to talk about community and contributions. And one of the things that we learned really on in our life cycle, and when I was talking a little bit in the break a little bit about 4 years ago, we wrote the first release of OpenShift. It was a Ruby and Rails app. It was it was a wonderful platform as a service. And when Go came out and Kubernetes came out, we pivoted the entire thing and rewrote OpenShift about almost a little over a year and a half ago. So the entire thing has been re-architected. We had a metaphor before of gears and cartridges, which were Linux containers. But now we've gone to adopt a full-on Docker model and use Kubernetes. And what that's meant for us is that we have to, rather than reinventing the wheel, so we didn't come up with our own cluster orchestration, we decided that we were going to embed resources into the community. And so Red Hat has done a lot of work, and if you look on the list for Kubernetes, I think we are the #2 contributor to that project now outside of Google. But if you look at the list of people who are from Red Hat, the majority of them are actually people from the OpenShift engineering team. So we have had a philosophy over the past year and a half of embedding resources, like embedded troops, like you embed a newspaper to follow the troops. We actually put our money where our mouth is, rather than creating our own orchestration set of tooling, because we really believe that that's the way you can actually exponentially grow and really make your product work well. The other thing, and you'll be hearing lots about this, is we do a lot of work on OpenStack as well. And probably 2.5 years ago, we started working with the Heat folks, and there were a whole bunch of some of the very early Heat templates that were in the OpenStack repository were OpenShift ones. So we were helping to test how Heat worked and how all that. So we've done a lot of work trying to make sure that the orchestration pieces of deploying OpenShift work really seamlessly, as well as work on all kinds of other things as Red Hat. I think someone told me today that there were over 400 Red Hat folks here at OpenStack Summit, which I think is like absurdly wonderful. But it's also quite interesting because I only see a small fraction of them here in the marketplace and in the keynotes and stuff, because they're all over, they're engineers working on the Design Summit side of things. So we really are committed to not reinventing the wheel and to working together with the other communities. But it's not just Kubernetes and it's not just OpenStack. There are a whole slew of other open source projects because we are that lamp stack. We are helping you deploy your applications wherever they may land. So we're actually working right now really closely with Microsoft Azure, or something I never thought I would be doing as a Linux person, but deploying OpenShift over there. So there are so many communities that help build our OpenShift Origin, which is the project that I run, and which we feed into the other products that Red Hat makes money that pays my salary. So OpenShift Enterprise, which is our on-premise version, OpenShift Dedicated, which is now running on Google Compute Cloud and is our managed hosting provider service, and OpenShift Online, which has been around for 4 years, which is our actual public cloud at Red Hat. Another secret that's happening over at Red Hat is we actually have a public cloud that you can log in and deploy your applications on. And all of that is going to be running with Kubernetes and Docker, and we're just doing that. So the interesting thing for me from a community management point of view is that we really do have a lot more in common with each other than differences. And so and we really try and play on that. And in order to do that, we've really had to transform our community building practices. Because in the past, I think community managers like myself, we spent a lot of energy trying to get all of you in the room here to contribute code to our projects. All right, so my job in the past was all about, can I get you to do a pull request? And then your job was trying to get me to merge that into my project or vet that thing. So that was really a focus of most community management. But now we kind of have to change that metaphor around a little bit. And OpenShift has seen this sort of exponential growth by opening up our community to go beyond cloud collaboration. So what we've seen is sort of what I call community as a service, trying to figure out different ways to connect all of these different communities. So like coming to OpenStack, running meetups that are joint OpenStack, OpenShift things, and lots of different community companies are using OpenShift these days. And we've seen by opening up the door, by putting people in touch with each other and creating this thing that we now call OpenShift Commons. So if anybody read the Cathedral and the Bazaar, Eric Riley thing? So cathedrals are wonderful. They're the silos that in the past, and the bazaar is where all the vendors come to the marketplace. But we're trying to create a different space, more of a peer-to-peer network, where you can come and share your best practices if you're in the EDU space or the telco space, or if you're an OpenStacker, there are SIGs for you for all of that, and connect people on a more engaged level to get the user feedback, to get much more than just your code contributions. And so by doing that and connecting, we have now over 200 plus companies that have deployed OpenShift, that are providing services or hosting OpenShift. That's the other thing that's really kind of interesting about OpenShift, is it's under the hood at a lot of public clouds. So you can log into GetUp Cloud or Cloud Isle or a number of other CNPAs, a number of clouds out there that are using OpenShift on a regular basis. So what we're trying to do is get all that operational experience into the operations SIG and work through all of that so that people can connect the peers. So it's no longer about, can I just get you to do a pull request? It's more like, can I get you to tell me your use case? Can I get you to tell me where your pain points are? And can you tell each other and talk amongst each other? And in some ways, it's Red Hat stepping out of the conversation and letting those conversations go on between each other. And so what we've done is really try to take the diversity in our universes, whether they're telcos or banks or .govs and enterprises or whatever, and bring them together so that they can be in a conversation directly with the core contributors, and the upstream projects like Kubernetes or Docker, or Ceph is a big part of the community that we're working here, along with all the service providers and operators. So if you're thinking about launching an internal OpenShift deployment for in-house, there are a whole group of people that are just sitting there talking to each other, sharing their experiences and use cases with the core contributors and the engineers listening in and giving presentations and pushing their feedback into the design of the product. So we've tried to reshape what we mean by community by bringing in all of these different people. And we hope that you'll join us too and bring your use cases from the OpenStack world. And we're launching an OpenStack SIG next week. So I will send out all that information so that you can hear about that and talk to all the other OpenStack folks, because I know Semantic's here, FICO's here. There's a whole bunch of other OpenShift and on OpenStack talks here as well. And we're really trying to make sure that we have a community of best practices that we can all share together. So what we're really trying to do, as opposed to getting communication from core contributors, is to take and build all those connections across the different communities, and then take that feedback, whether it's about Kubernetes or Docker or OpenStack or some other potential, and feed that back into the design process and connect everybody as peers across the ecosystem. And it's been very successful for us as a community, and it's allowed us to grow pretty exponentially. We have 2.5 million applications running on OpenShift Online alone. We have a whole host of enterprise customers running on OpenShift Dedicated now, and we are really learning a lot by sharing these and deepening our connections with each other. So I'd encourage you to come to the commons.openshift.org, which is our landing page. Join it. There's a whole calendar of events on all kinds of different topics. Last week we did single sign-on. I think next week we're kicking off the images builder SIG. So if you're interested in building containers and the images and the whole process and life cycle of that, there's a SIG for that. So please, thank you very much for coming today. You can find out more information. We'll be down in the Red Hat booth giving OpenShift and Kubernetes presentations and deep dives. And tomorrow at 10:45, I think, Mark Lamarine, around that time, is going to give a technical talk on OpenShift and Kubernetes. And so thank you very much for your time.